Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm Kyle Buckland, and I'm your guest host for this week on Art School Live while Eric is away. Today, we've got a great painter on for you. My guest is Ben Lussier. What's up, Ben?
Not too much. I'm doing okay. How are you, Kyle?
Doing great. Can you tell us what you're going to be showing us today?
Well, I'm hoping to show you a little bit and give you some thoughts about trying to get more paint on your painting, which is
Awesome.
Something that I think particularly a lot of beginners struggle with.
Absolutely. Well, that sounds exciting. Let's get the show started.
It's Art School Live with Eric Rhoads. Now, here's your host, Eric Rhoads.
All right. Well, just like yesterday, I'm still not Eric Rhoads, but I am here on behalf of Eric, and I'm excited to be here. We have a great painter on the show today, Ben Lussier, who's going to show us how to use thick paint in our paintings, which I think is something that we can all benefit from. But first, I want to tell you about today's prize. So today's prize is an easel brush clip. To get a chance to win this prize, all you have to do is just tell us down in the comments where you're watching from. So pretty simple. Just write down in the comments where you're watching from, and we'll enter you in to win this prize. So last show's winner is Carla Yeager from Canyon Lake, Texas. Congratulations, Carla. You've won Eric's marketing book. So if you can send an email to asl@streamlinepublishing.com to claim your prize, that'll be great. And that's a great book. So don't forget, we also have a gift for you today. So everybody that's watching can download our free ebook, 201 Essential Plein Air Painting Tips. Go to outdoorpainter.com/ebook to get that free gift. Also, don't forget to subscribe to this channel, Art School Live on YouTube, and follow at Eric Rhoads on Instagram. To see more of our guests' work, Ben's work, you can visit Bejamin Lussier fineartist.com, and you can visit my website, kylebuckland.com, to see more of my work and learn more about my upcoming workshops and events. So without further ado, Ben, take it away.
Hi. I thought, I don't know, Kyle, is it worth showing my palette before I get going here?
I think that would be great. Yeah, I think people often underestimate how much paint it takes to really paint with some impasto. So.
Well, I know it sounds like a tautology, but the first thing you have to understand if you want to get more paint on your canvas is that you have to put it out. We can't push what's not there. I don't even remember who said this, but there's a quote that I like that you can't paint with puddles, right? So this is about how much paint I have on my palette at any particular time. It's maybe not always quite that much, and it's not always this clean.
Yeah.
But I like to make sure that I have it out so that it's there to use.
Cool. Can you give us a rundown on the colors that you have on that palette too?
Well, it's probably a palette. Well, let me show it to you again. You were a student of my dad's, were you not?
Yes, absolutely.
So you might be familiar with this. I have titanium white. I have permanent madder deep. I have a permanent red. This is an orange that I mix up with cad yellow light and the aforementioned red. I mix up kind of a yellow ochre. I use Viridian. I use ultramarine blue. I mix up a cerulean from these two. And I have a purple down here that I make from ultramarine and red. So that's definitely a palette that I inherited from my father. I may someday, I just want to plug this phone back in. May someday introduce and mess around with some other stuff, but I find that this works pretty well. I like that it's simple, and if it's not broke, then don't fix it, right?
Absolutely.
So this is a block-in that I did a couple days ago just to kind of get things started. One thing that I would say maybe about using thick paint is that you don't start out throwing too much paint on the canvas. Groupie talked about starting with a wash that was so thin you could see it running down your brush. So you can't jump into, at least I don't like to jump into it so thick right off the bat. at this point, I'm still very much in a planning stage. I don't want to like overcommit to things. So I it's not super thin, but it's not super thick either. You get too much paint on there, it can get a little bit out of control, maybe faster than you would like. So looking at this, I think that maybe the first thing I'm going to do is try to get a little more of an accurate color in the sky. The sky kind of nominally often is a cool color. And I think they can all see the reference photo that I'm working from, correct?
Yes, we've got it up on the screen.
You can hear me okay?
Yep.
All right. So sky on a clear day like this, nominally is a cool color. It's kind of a blue. But even on days when the sky is a very vivid blue, you have to keep in mind that you are dealing with something that's a luminous phenomenon, and there's a lot of warmth in it. So I don't do this all the time, but one of the things that I like to do occasionally is put kind of a warm wash down and kind of invite some of that to come through as I'm putting in something that's a little more true to life.
Yeah, so important. I see people go too cool way too fast a lot of times, especially when they're first starting. They look at the sky, they go, oh, the sky's blue, so I need to get out my blue paint. And then ultimately it's just very hard to work that warmth back into a cool sky. So I think you're right on the money there with that, starting with that nice warm tone. Yep.
Try to get something in. I think it'll help it read a little better. It'll help it keep me from getting too confused, right? And I might actually bring some of this orange back in there later. Another thing that I can say about using thick paint, and starting thin, starting to think about getting a little thicker, but oil paint is very forgiving, which is something also that I think particularly a lot of beginners don't understand. They find the medium very intimidating, and it's really not, right? Because I can put this down, I can scrape it off, I can build it up. But yeah, if I get this a little more true to life, I think it's going to help kind of the rest of the thing read a little better. And I'm actually cutting back into this now, not even with blue. I'm using, this is like almost pure Viridian in white, which is a lovely color for skies, because it really adds some white to it. It reads very blue.
We've got a question from the audience. How do you make your cerulean, and how do you make your yellow ochre?
The cerulean is just a mixture of ultramarine deep and Viridian. I used to add white to it. I don't anymore because I just like to keep it kind of deep. Like, right, you can always add white to something. You can't take white out of it later.
Right.
So I like to keep, I have found that I like to keep it kind of a deeper value, just so that I have that available to me. The yellow ochre is about I want to say it's about 3 parts cad yellow light, with about 1 part Viridian and 1 part permanent red light. And that'll give you kind of like a nice warm golden thing, pigment to work with. I only use, I think it's 5 tube colors in white. I really definitely aim for simplicity. I don't like to have everything under the sun on my palette, because it just invites confusion.
Yeah, I agree. I think that one of the great benefits of painting with a limited palette is, and especially if you're mixing up your own secondaries or your own earth colors like yellow ochre is, then you get a little bit of some of your primary colors in each mixture. And so when you lay down colors side by side, they tend to jive better because they have some. It's almost like they're relatives, I guess, because they have similar colors that make them up. So, yeah.
For sure, yeah, you get that nice vibration there.
Yeah.
So I mean, I get a little color in the sky now. I like to try to like work a whole painting rather than trying to do like one thing at a time. Next thing I think I might do is try to get a little more warmth. You know, kind of the inverse. I started out with a very warm thing up here. I've just cooled it down. This water here obviously is a horizontal surface. It's reflecting a lot of light. Very dark on a day like the day this photo was taken. You know, one of the factors there is because it's very choppy, but it's still like it's going to reflect a lot of light from the sky. I think that right now, like when I'm blocking things in, I really try to think very, very, very simply about what I'm doing. So I think maybe I've made this too cool, and I would like to maybe warm it up a little bit.
The contrast too is so interesting. You know, people often say, how do I get something to look bright? And I say, well, put some dark stuff around it, you know. And so I think having that dark water is really acts as a nice foil for all that bright sunlight, you know, the values in the snow and everything.
Right, yeah, because that snow is like so bright.
Right. Yeah, I think people often they get so caught up with color they forget about the importance of value, really, too. You know, and when you're juggling with stuff like that brightness of that snow, you know, and compared to the water, you know, color is only going to take you so far, but you really have to get those values. How dark or how light is it compared to, you know, what's next to it?
Oh, absolutely. And especially with a painting like this, when you have that snow that's like so vivid and so bright. I mean, like, it's also, you have to think about how much light it's reflecting and how luminous it is. And if I like, you know, if I get to the point where I don't hold anything in reserve, right? If I don't keep, if I don't kind of keep things as dark as they need to be, I'm going to have to cut back into this with almost like pure titanium, and it's going to lose that warmth that you need to have it read like snow that's reflecting this very warm sunlight, right? So we try to keep what's in shadow pretty dark, and I will generally aim towards. I just lost my train of thought.
You were talking about keeping the shadows darker. I think a lot of people, you know, tend to they lose that impact in their design because the shadows get too light, and so then you're not separating, you know, that the difference between the dark and light enough to have that nice design. So,
right, you have to try to keep it. You have to try to, you know, you're always exaggerating things, right, and trying to balance them. I don't know if I love that, but.
Yeah, I was talking to Doug Clark yesterday about that. Is that, you know, it's our job as painters we're not just trying to copy what's out there. And I think this is a great lesson for everybody watching to notice that with Ben today, we're dealing with the same stuff. You know, we're taking this scene, but then he's, you know, making some decisions about what he wants to do with the piece based on what's going to look good in the painting. So we often get too preoccupied with the subject matter and trying to copy what's out there, but ultimately it's about the painting. I tell everybody, when the painting's in the gallery, you're not going to have a picture of the subject matter there, you know, so people are not going to be comparing, oh, they didn't get this perfect or that right. It becomes about, you know, what looks good in the painting.
Right. And I mean, like, you'd be surprised how little information your eye actually picks up if you're paying attention to how you see what you see. Hopefully I'm just trying to get a little bit of warmth here. I'm trying to get this to recede a little bit and maybe lighten it up just a tad.
And so is that just a lighter and slightly warmer blue that you're adding on top of that?
I've grayed it down a little bit. Yeah, I've added a little orange to it, but I've also put a little more viridian in it to try to get that to vibrate with the sky a little more.
Mm-hmm.
The thing that you can't see that I'm doing is I'm not like religiously good at this. Because I don't know, so much of this is like embodied work. It's stuff that we don't even think about. But I try when I'm mixing my colors, I try very hard to use a palette knife to do it because it's easier to pick, it's easier to pick up a big chunk and make sure that you're mixing enough paint because there are too many people, we were talking about this before the show. I'm only just kind of dipping my toe into teaching, but my dad's been doing it for, going on 30 years now. And this is something that I've heard him say a lot is that you get people who haven't painted very much before. And they, their first mistake is that they don't put enough paint out on their palette. Their second mistake is that they go around mixing colors and they're like, they're dipping their brush in just a little bit and they're spending all this time trying to mix up this color perfectly. And by the time they're done, there's not even enough to really get on the brush.
Yeah.
If you're going to spend the time to mix the color, you got to make sure that you have enough of it. And you have to try not to think about it. There's going to be paint left over on my palette when I'm done that I didn't use. And you have to try not to think about that as waste.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I tell people that's the paint it takes to make the painting.
Yes. Absolutely.
Yep.
Doing probably too much talking, not enough painting.
All right, we've got a question from the audience. When you get your initial sketch on the canvas, are you sketching with outlines or do you use outlines or just filled in masses is the question.
I try to think about it as filled in masses. I try to keep my line work very minimal. This particular block-in maybe even is a little more, is maybe even a little more than I would do. It was hard not to put this together with the thought that people were going to be looking at it. But I do a little bit of line work, but yeah, I really try to reduce everything to the smallest number of simple little shapes that I can. Just big masses.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's smart. We don't want to end up with a whole coloring book and then feel like we're just coloring in between the lines. That can create a static.
Right. And I think that my block-ins, I think I tend to be a little bit brutalist about it even maybe I'm really trying not to overthink my block-in because the block-in things can always be shifted around and scraped out and pushed. And I think that there's actually value certainly to be had in, putting paint on, taking it off. This is how we build the surface, right?
The construction and deconstruction. Yeah. Yeah, we find things that happen when we're in that process that could have never happened if we were just trying to, start from the beginning and finish at the end and never take any, steps backwards. So,
well, this is also, one of the things that I wanted to make sure I mentioned about, using thicker paint is that I try to think about it painting is a dialogue. It's really more like a conversation. And there's a few different participants, right? There's me. Certainly, I'm involved. Certainly, the subject matter is involved. But the surface that I'm painting on is involved. The materials that I'm using are involved. The brush is involved. I was just listening the other day to an audiobook by Alan Watts. And he was talking about how in the West, in the arts, we think so much about, we talk about mastery. Talking about mastering a medium. And his point was that this is, there's almost something savage about this from an Eastern perspective. Because, they talk about how, like, if you're climbing a mountain, we might think about it as conquering a mountain, right? But the mountain is just as involved in lifting you up as your legs are. And the materials are just as involved in this painting as I am, maybe even more so. And I think that, like, when you start using more paint, more medium, just you get the materials more involved. Like they'll surprise you in lovely ways.
Yeah, great words of wisdom here. I hope everybody's learning from this. Is some really great information that Ben's imparting on you here, because it's, just to think about things differently like that. Think about your relationship with the materials, and that's a great, just a way to kind of think about things differently. As artists, I think it's always good for us to see things from different perspectives and different angles, and this is why, taking workshops and listening to other painters is a great idea, because that's something that I never consciously thought of. But you're absolutely right. There is definitely a relationship between you and the materials that you can explore more fully if you're using the materials to their fullest extent, I guess.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's looking great. Even that little bit of texture that you put in the water, just using the thicker paint, I mean, that would be impossible to do with thin paint, and it's already starting to create a sense of movement in the water.
You definitely, you can use it almost, you start getting more paint on there, you can start kind of using it sculpturally to suggest texture. The other thing that you can do, even with something like the sky that's kind of flat, is that you can move people's eye around just with the way that you're putting paint down. You can do it without even really changing the color or anything like at all.
Right, just the direction of the brush stroke and the way that the paint's kind of pushing the viewer's eye, that the actual brush stroke itself is moving the eye around. Yeah, that's a great little bit of wisdom.
The other thing I guess that I'll say is, like, I tend to operate when I'm painting more off of intuition. I know that you were just talking about making decisions, and I'm certainly making decisions, but I'm not always making them consciously. And for me, painting is so much about just feeling things out, putting paint down, seeing if something works, trying to figure out what doesn't work. I mean, I don't know. I was thinking too about, like, how many times I've been out somewhere painting for an hour and a half. We've all had this experience. It's just, you don't feel like it's going quite as well as it could. And I've pulled a lot of paintings like that out, actually, just by taking a minute, taking a deep breath, and really just committing to putting paint on the canvas. Sometimes kind of haphazardly even. Anyway.
Yeah, that's a great, I tell people, when I'm teaching and people ask me about using thick paint, I say, just use thick paint just for the sake of using thick paint at first, because you're going to have to get the hang of, handling it. It feels different on the brush. It goes onto the canvas different. And there are going to be times where you might feel like, well, I don't know exactly what this area needs, but that might be when you really want to scoop up some thick paint and just kind of throw it at that area and see what happens, because a lot of times there are things that will happen with that thicker body of paint that just would not happen without that amount of paint. So it can be a great thing to do when you're feeling a little frustrated with a painting, just like you said, just kind of go all in and decide to push through that frustration with thicker application of paint.
Well, yeah, and I mean, like, there are so many times it's like you can't always tell what something needs until you get it down and you can look at it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, oh, that's probably too light. I mean, I've watched people demo, and it's like I get the feeling sometimes that it's like I don't know if they just have like a fantastic visual imagination or what. But I do sometimes get this feeling that like there are people who really know what they're trying to do and they can see it in their head. And I'm definitely not one of those people. I have to put it down and I have to see it and I have to see what it looks like before I know if it's working or not.
Yeah, well, there are definitely many different paths to the same destination, and there's no one right way. That's one thing I love about artists. You know, there are guiding principles, but there are no rules to say that one person's way of doing something is the right way. And you know, two people can do completely different things, and both of them be right according to the situation or the artist. But yeah, that intuitiveness, developing that is a skill set in itself. You know, trying to just practice putting something down and see how it feels. Like you said, it's a lot of times you don't know until you put something down.
Right, for sure.
Yep. Another thing too is people don't realize the impact that thick paint can have on a viewer when they actually see your painting in person. You know, it's hard to read sometimes on a photograph, but when you're actually standing in front of a painting that's been painted with some thick paint, it's a different experience.
Oh yes, absolutely. Try to play up some of this dark. I got, it's a situation where this light is kind of raking in from over here. So I see the left of this building, the lovely trash set of Monhegan Island, is a little bit lighter than the right side. Try to play up some of these darks. That might be a little more purple than I like it, but.
Now, do you live on Monhegan part time, or are you there?
I was out there for about 3 years. I do not live there now. I spent a little bit of time out there in the fall, reprising my role as truck driver. I liked it out there, but it's a tough gig.
Yeah. It's been a while since I've been out there. The first time when I was out there with your dad at his workshops, and we'll give him a shout out, David. He's a great painter too and a teacher, David Lussier. And so I did a workshop with David out on Monhegan Island, and it's just a great place to absorb some inspiration. So it's been played a role in art history and American painting. A lot of great painters kind of took to Monhegan Island and
just
explored its thing.
Just about anyone who's anyone has been there.
Yeah, it's a great.
The glaring exception for me is Winslow Homer, but
yeah, never made it out, huh?
No, I mean he had his own thing going on down at Prout's Neck, I guess, and not to my knowledge anyway. He was never out there, but I had a really fun experience. I had just been out, and I was living in Manhattan at the time. I was a grad student at Columbia for many years, and coming back from Monhegan, I had a friend visiting who wanted to go to the Nikolai Roerich Museum. And it's not far from Columbia. Nikolai Roerich was a Russian symbolist painter. He worked with the Ballet Russe and all kinds of things. Traveled around all over the place. And I'm at the Nikolai Roerich Museum, and I'm looking at some paintings, and I'm going like, God, that looks familiar. And turns out he spent the summer of 1922 on Monhegan.
Oh, cool.
I haven't been able to find too much information about that out, but
yeah, it's every time that was really the first workshop I ever took was going out there to Monhegan and painting with your dad. And it's just so the atmosphere when you can get around a bunch of people like that. I mean, we've spent a week out there and there's maybe 15 or 20 painters. But I had just been kind of living in a cave basically and just painting around Southwest Virginia, and I was on the internet, so I was seeing other artists, but I wasn't getting out and really meeting people. And I went to Monhegan, and it blew my mind because it was like I had found my people. Yeah. If you want to take a little break, we can take a little break. I want to talk a little bit about the convention that's coming up, and then we'll come back to you here in just a second.
Absolutely.
Awesome. All right. So, thinking about how getting around people and getting to interact with groups of artists can benefit you. I can't recommend the Plein Air Convention and Expo enough. So if you've never been, it's awesome. The 11th Plein Air Convention and Expo is coming up in May. So May 20th through the 24th this year. We're going to have it at the Great Smoky Mountains in Biltmore State. So I've been on the faculty for the past 2 years, and I'll be there teaching again. This year, it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm so excited that it's in North Carolina because I can drive and take some big canvases. So you'll see me. I'll be out in the field helping people. So if you're there, I'll be able to come around and work with you. So there's going to be lots of demos going on different stages in the morning, and then in the afternoon we all go out to paint together, which is really cool because you get to go to some great locations. This year we have 4 pre-convention workshops. Joe Paquette is doing oils. Aaron Schur is doing pastels. Amit Kapoor is coming all the way from India, and she's there to do some watercolor painting. Carrie Curran is going to do the basics pre-convention workshop. So this is going to guide you through demos in all media, walk you through everything that you need to know about the materials, easels, and painting outside. So that's going to be a great opportunity for beginners. So let's take a look at a little video here about the Plein Air Convention. All right, doesn't that look like fun? I tell you, it's just such an awesome experience, and I'm really looking forward to it this year. I hope you all can come. If you're coming to the convention, make sure you find me. Come and find me. I want to see what you're working on. I want to get to know you. I want to meet you and see what you're working on, and see if I can help you out with your artwork. So, and also don't forget that I have a video out through Streamline, Courageous Color. So you can find that at painttube.tv/ASL. And we've got another video coming up in the not too distant future on design. So if you want to get tickets to the convention, go to pleinairconvention.com. You can get more information and buy some tickets there. So awesome. All right, let's get back to Ben's great demo here that he's doing. All right, Ben, you there?
Oh, I'm still here.
All right. Yeah, looking great. really popping some of those values in now. It's really starting to glow.
It's always surprises me sometimes how little it takes to make something pop, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Start getting a few little details in there and suddenly it starts looking a lot more finished.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think patience comes into play there, because I think people they want to try to put in the finishing details before they get to the end a lot of times, and so
Right.
you've done a great job of kind of setting the stage.
Right. It doesn't take a lot to suggest some of these things. That might be a little dark. Oh.
Is that a board you're working on, or a stretch canvas? Do you have a preference?
I actually try to mix up my surfaces with some degree of regularity. You know, it kind of depends. I'm a bit of a studio nomad right now. When I was on Monhegan, you know, a lot of the times, like if you're out there, I had to work to live out there, and you know, you're often, you know, you're living in a little 6x8 room, so it can be hard to find space. Anyway, the short version is, yeah, it really depends on kind of like what my setup is. This right now is just gator board, like, you know, reinforced foam board with I got 3 coats of gesso on it.
Cool.
It's nice and simple. I recently bought some Alumacomp. I bought some Alumacomp with linen on it. I haven't painted on linen in a very long time. But it's, again, I think that like different surfaces invite different ways of handling paint. So it's for me, it's very much about that kind of like trying to get some dialogue going with the materials that I'm using.
Yeah. Well, it's looking great. We got about 10 minutes left. So
Okay.
You're doing fine. I think you're really doing a great job of explaining everything that you're doing. I think the people are really going to get a lot from this. So,
well, I might be jabbering more than I'm actually painting, but
that's good. I think it gives people some insight into what's going on kind of behind your mind there while you're painting. I think that's good. Do you find that a rigid surface is better for using thick paint than say a stretched canvas, or does it not matter really to you?
I actually, to tell you the truth, Kyle, haven't done much painting on stretch canvas. I have not often been set up really to stretch it. So it's really, for me, it's kind of just for the sake of simplicity. I've always used board, and I grew up like, you know, I grew up making panels for my dad. He was often painting on gator board. He'd, you know, glue linen down to it. Very simple, effective. Maybe someday I'll get some stretcher bars out and.
Yeah, I just asked. I wondered, you know, so I don't really pay too much attention to the different surfaces, but I know some people are, you know, like the hard, rigid surfaces for impasto painting.
It's yeah. I mean, it's kind of. I know. It's all I know. I like it. I like it just fine. I actually like, this is such a simple surface, and it takes almost no effort to make it. I really like. You know, I don't even like, some people roll it on, you know, some people try to make it really smooth. I just get a big brush and I brush it on. You know, very simple. I like it a lot. Does the trick for me.
Well, it's like you said about your palette. If it's not broken, right, there's no reason to fix it. So if you find something that works for you,
yes.
yeah, we have enough
but I am
decisions
excited excited to paint on linen again a little bit this winter, hopefully at some point.
Yeah. We've got some folks that are asking if you're comfortable with it, if they could see your palette one more time. I think some folks joined a little later. And
yeah, sure.
would you be able to show your palette one more time? It'll be interesting to see kind of how the mixtures have kind of materialized there too.
Well, I mean, one thing that I will say though too is like I used to. This goes back to something that you were saying.
Yeah.
I actually, like, when I started painting, I painted much thicker than I do now. I still, I take great pains to make sure that there's enough paint on the canvas, and that I have enough paint on my brush, that I'm not kind of like, I don't know, right? That I'm not fighting my materials, but I have thinned out some as I've gone on. So, and I know I'm not particularly methodical about how I mix paint or where I mix it, but you can see I've only made the tiniest little dent in my piles there. I would say too, like, some people are so worried about, like, wasting paint, and I find that if I have all that paint out, it does provide some impetus to get into the studio, right? It's just sitting there on my palette drying out. I know that I better get to it.
Yeah, and I think too, it's almost psychological, having a lot of paint out. Then if you need to use a lot of paint, you're not afraid to use it because you've got plenty out on your palette. Doesn't mean you're going to use it all, but just having it all out there can be a benefit to you.
Absolutely. I don't like, particular. I mean, in the studio is kind of one thing, but I definitely do not like having to interrupt myself when I'm out somewhere,
right,
to get like more paint on my palette. Can also, like, save yourself a lot of back problems if you don't have to cart around a bunch of tubes with you everywhere you go. I'm really just trying to think about softening some of this up in a few,
it's looking great.
Few spots.
It's a nice organic way to work, kind of bring everything up all at once.
I definitely am most of the time not a man with a plan. But I like it. It works for me. It's good. One of the, I grew up painting, and mostly as a kid, I just found it frustrating. I got back into painting when I was in grad school because I was spending so much time in my library, and so much time at a desk, and especially now with like word processors, you can edit writing just forever. One of the things that I like about painting is that, like, it invites me to turn my brain off a little bit, or at least my conscious brain. And at the end of the day, if I go out painting and I don't go home with something that I love, there's always the next time. It's kind of nice just to, like, move on from some of these things.
Yeah, I think it was Robert Henry that said that the purpose is not to create art, but to be in that wonderful state that makes art inevitable.
Yes, for sure. My day job right now is I'm a middle school teacher. It's fantastic. But I do art. I do art with the middle schoolers, and I do art with the upper elementary. And I'm always trying to remind them that, like, that art really is it's the process, more than the product that we're interested in. That there's only one way to get better at these things, and it's to do them a lot
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, great advice. I know people are learning a lot here because I'm learning some stuff. So we're all learning together, and you're doing a great job. And that painting is really looking awesome.
It's coming along. I certainly won't finish it, but
It's getting colder looking. I feel like I need to put on a coat just looking at it.
oh yeah,
So that's good.
it's definitely cold out there
Yeah.
in the wintertime. Pretty windy. How's the weather down south?
It's starting to get a little spring-like here. We're just starting to see some daffodils blooming in the backyard, and we've had some days up in the 70s. So it's kind of mixed around here because I'm up in the mountains, so it can be cold. But then because we're down south, we also get the warmer climate. So
Well, it's
nice
about
to
30.
travel.
About 30 degrees when I woke up here in Maine this morning. So
Yeah, it's a little chilly. I think it's about 65 outside right now, so I'm not complaining.
it's breezed up, as the Mainers say.
Yeah, those strokes are really kind of popping some stuff. We've got a question.
It's like I was
Sorry.
saying. Sometimes it's no. I'm sorry to interrupt. I do want to hear what you had to say, but it's this. I don't know. It might be a little too bright, but it goes back to what I was saying with like sometimes it's these little things that you do that just make the painting sing.
Mm-hmm. We had a question from the audience. They were wondering: was your underpainting wet when you started, or had it dried?
It was a little bit wet. I did it Sunday night.
Okay.
The medium that I use, again, like shout out to my dad, inherited it from him.
Mm-hmm.
Is 2 parts Gamsol or like a terp of your choice, 1 part stand oil and 1 part Damar varnish. And the Damar varnish helps it kind of dry and tack up pretty quick, particularly if you do a thinner underpainting. It's just a really nice surface to work on because it's still slick enough that you can push it around if you need to, but it's dry enough and it's got some tack to it. Wonderful surface to work on.
Yeah. So we got about 2 minutes left. Is there anything that you haven't had the opportunity to say, or is there kind of a main takeaway that you'd want to let people know about using thicker paint or anything in particular?
Well, the first rule of Tautology Club is the first rule of Tautology Club. But really, like, if you take nothing away from it, is like if you want to paint with thicker paint, like put it out and use it. For sure.
There you go. That's a great, simple, straightforward answer.
Build it up. Try to build it up kind of slow.
Yeah, I like what you said about that.
And like when in doubt, I definitely think that advice of like, throw more paint on there. Because you can let the paint do some. You can let it do the work for you. Define that edge a little better.
It's nice to have that dark and that light there. A nice bit of contrast. That's looking great. I think we're kind of at a good place to kind of wrap it up here.
Absolutely.
It's really coming along. Really enjoyed having you on today. I think you've just done a wonderful job, and I know people have learned a lot. So thanks so much for coming on and joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Have a good one. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining me again today. I look forward to seeing you again tomorrow. Again, I'll be here as your guest host all week long while Eric is away, and we've got some great painters coming up for you tomorrow, Thursday, and Friday. So I hope everybody enjoyed today, and we'll see you again tomorrow.